Hello, this is Joseph Carlson, and this is episode 193 of Gaming with Grief. And I'm calling this episode The Banshees of Inisherin. But before that, I want to remind you guys that this podcast will hit my website, www.gamingwithgrief.com, Monday morning at 7 a.m. Please go there and leave a comment and let me know what you think of the show. You can also subscribe to the podcast in either Apple iTunes, the Google Play Store, Spotify, or listen to the audio day and date at 7 a.m. when it hits on YouTube. So please subscribe to those places. Let me know, give me the the reviews, stuff like that, the stars, the likes, the thumbs up, all that kind of stuff. You can also write to me at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com. Let me know what you think of the show. If there's a game you want me to review, leave it there. You can also find me on Twitter at JustLittleJoe. So yeah, this episode is about a full spoilercast of The Banshees of Inisherin. My friend Martin and I go on a big spoiler cast. We ruin a lot of the movie. I'm warning you right now. But if you want to, you can listen to two grown adults two men that have been friends for a long time, talk about the movie. I think it's very special. I allude to the fact that I hope it wins something in the race for awards, possibly an Academy Award, something like that. So please enjoy the talk. Hey, so Martin, to start out this podcast, I just got to say this publicly. When your closest friend, since you were 16, I can't do the math, I'm not a math guy. When your closest friend, since you were 16, says, hey, we should really talk about the Banshees of Inisherin. And I know what the movie's about. It's about two friends that break up, that no longer see eye to eye. I was like, should we? Should we talk about the Banshees of Inisherin? Are you trying to tell me something? Well, now I got to watch the movie because I don't want to say, oh, I don't respect you and I don't need to watch it. But, you know, what happened? What's going on, Martin? When did you see? It came out 22, right? It came out in,
Yes, it came out this year.
Yeah.
Or last year.
Yeah. Was it the end of the year?
I'm not sure when it came out. I've wanted to see it because those two actors I really enjoy, and of course
Oh, they're amazing.
with name recognition you're just like, hey, I like those guys, I'm going to check them out. And I didn't even know what the movie was even about, but
Oh.
I watched it, and then with the whole gaming with grief, and I saw it, and we've talked about people and ourselves that have mental illness, and how
Mm-hmm.
mental illness
Yeah.
is a real thing, especially in men.
Yeah.
We know that mental illness is a thing with women, and nothing about a disrespect there, but men don't talk about their mental illness, like it
No.
never existed.
Well,
And
we're
so
told
there's been a
we're
big
not
push.
supposed to suck it up.
Correct.
I was just watching a clip where somebody just said, I don't want to hear your feelings. And I thought, oh no.
Yeah.
It was just like somebody giving a speech like, I don't want to hear about your feelings, and it was like, really? I want to hear about my feelings.
Yeah.
I want to know how I'm doing.
Well,
So,
lately within 21, 22, there's been a really big push about men.
oh,
Um,
20, you mean 2022?
yeah, the year 2021 and 2022, there's been a big push about men actively opening up about, their grief
Mm-hmm.
and how they're dealing with it. And if they're not, then they should. And so I watched this movie, not necessarily knowing that that's what it was
Be
gonna
about.
be about. And then after I finished it, I was like, it was solid, man. I was like, wow, this is
Oh yeah, just to give a
uh,
disclaimer, we probably will be spoiling this movie because we liked it so much. I'll record an intro and talk about how we're going to spoil it, but I mean, I want to talk about this whole movie, so I don't want to be like, well, let's beat around the bush and not talk about plot, because we want people to. I mean, the movie's been out for a while. I really want
yeah,
to talk about some of the themes and stuff. I don't want to beat around the bush, so we
right,
will be
right.
ruining the movie. So that's just another disclaimer. I will give one before, do an intro before the episode starts. But yes, we will be spoiling this
Well,
movie.
right off the bat, you get a sense of what the movie is about. And in all fairness of like spoiling it, I honestly thought that the ending was going to be a little bit different, because you've got friends that have known each other since they were kids,
I do
and
respect the fact that he didn't kill the dog, and I do like the line of dialogue when he said, "Why would I kill you? You're the best part about him." which I thought was a great line. And then he's like, he was doing the thing at the end with the firewood, and he goes, let me grab the dog. I'll put the dog in the cart. Your dog's fine, And then at the end, he said, thanks for looking after my dog. And he said, anytime.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
I liked all that.
So basically, you have two friends, and so they go to the pub like every Tuesday. I bet they go to the pub every day. But
I know.
there's
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. It's like,
you're on an island that has nothing really going on. So
you know,
it's friends getting together at the pub, talking about their day, and so on and so forth. Well, he goes and his best friend in the whole world didn't want anything to do with him, and he's trying to figure out
that is a crazy
why.
shot in the beginning when he goes down to his house and he's just sitting in this place smoking, just
Yeah,
staring at the wall. It's like, what is going on there? What's
yeah,
happening? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That's nuts.
And so his friend no, he didn't basically tell him. All he told him is that you're boring.
Yeah.
There's and that's kind of a really crappy thing to say to a friend, is that
Well,
you're boring. But his reasons behind him being boring, I felt that he could have voiced them a little bit better to his friend rather than you're boring. Because is he boring? Yes, but that wasn't his reasoning. His reasoning is that he's getting older,
hmm
and
yeah, because he gives him that
his
other thing later of like,
yeah.
if you talk to me again, yeah, he wanted to
But
create. He wanted to create something.
right. Before he dies, he wanted something for the world to know him by.
hmm
And
Yeah.
if they just get together and they drink and they talk about their woes, like he sat
The
down, right?
contents of the donkey, Jenny, the donkey. I don't care about the contents of the donkey droppings. Yeah. Yeah. He
Right.
said,
He's like, you spent 2 hours telling me about how your donkey took a crap, right?
yeah.
And he's like, that's the best that we have about our day. And he goes,
Yeah.
I want to create. So that's why he was a little upset with his buddy. It wasn't that he was boring. It was that
Yeah.
he himself wasn't liking where he was at in
Yeah.
his life at his age. And I'm guessing they're about, mid 50s.
Yeah.
Um, and
Late
so
40s, mid
that's
50s. Yeah.
yeah, and so that was the basis of why he didn't want to be around his friend, not because he was boring. And then the mental anguish just slowly starts to show up
Yeah.
in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I do like is like any good fiction where you have two opposing viewpoints, like an argument or like a hero and a villain. Anytime you could see both sides of the argument, or you're like, hey, they both have good points. I think that's amazing. It doesn't happen a lot, but I do understand both their whatever. Like the idea of
Hands down.
wanting, yeah, the idea of wanting to create for
Yeah.
there was Patty and Colum, I think were, or Paddish, I think was his name, and Colum was the violinist, and I do get that idea of like, well, I'm spinning my wheels, like, what am I doing, Um, I get that, but like, Paddish's thing was like, hey man, this is what it is. Like we're on an island, like you said. There's not a lot going on. We have this moment of respite every afternoon where we just sit and talk, which it is what it is. And the sister, Paddish's sister, called out Colm and said, well, Paddish is kind of boring. And she said, everybody's boring. We're all boring here. What are we doing on the island? There's nothing going on. You're judging him for being boring. But like, we're all boring. It's fine. It's what it is, It's like,
Yeah.
you don't need to judge him because we're all the same, like
Right.
it's, and so, I mean, I saw both sides of like, what am I doing? Like, I want to make this, write this song or write a couple songs, and I'm literally just going to the pub every day,
Right.
you know, because he could have done that in the morning, and then 2 o'clock rolls around. All right, I'm gonna go to the pub. I've worked for the morning. I've gotten down what I can get down, and I'm going
Right.
to go to the pub now because I'm done with work for the day. He could have done
Right.
that. That would have been totally. And I'm actually gonna pull up the names because I keep screwing them up. Let me see.
No, you got him. I got him right here. Yeah. So
Okay,
Colin
yeah.
Farrell is Padrick,
Patrick.
and
Yeah,
Brendan Gleeson is Colm.
yeah. Calm. Yeah,
Colm.
yeah. Calm. Yeah.
Um,
Which
so
there's been a lot of talk online. I read a whole thing about the ideas. It is supposed to, because they do talk about that civil war going on in the mainland Ireland
yes.
between the IRA and not the NRA, the two Irish
Yeah.
forces. And I saw a great Twitter thread from an Irishman who immigrated to the States and was like, I'm sure people really like this movie, but unless you really know about Irish history, this is going to hit differently for a lot of people. And I heard an interview with the director who wrote it as well. I think his McDonald, I think is Malcolm McDonald. Anyway, he talked about he didn't know where the story was going when he wrote it.
No.
So again, full spoilers. When Colm decides to cut his fingers off, that first time he was like, "Is he going to do it? I don't know." And he did. He goes, he did do that because he had to follow through on what he said.
Yeah.
What is he? How serious is he going to go about this? If he doesn't follow through on what his threat, then there's no point, And then everybody's like, "Oh, you're just a paper tiger or anything," So yeah. And I do like that scene in the bar when Paddock gets a little bit drunk and is like, "What are you doing?" And I don't care and blah blah blah. And you'd rather hang out with that guy who would just randomly kill people for money than me and blah blah blah. And we're all boring and blah. And then he walked away and Colm said, "Oh, that's the most interesting he's ever been." In my whole life, I've never seen him that interesting. And Paddock could have done that as well. Of like, "Hey man, what are you writing? What are you doing? What are you? Oh, that's cool. Hey, show me." Like,
well,
I'm
he
not
did.
good with
Remember?
it.
Remember, he did.
Right.
He came up to him. He's like, oh, because he's like, listen. He comes to his house because he says, if you come to my house, I'm cutting off another finger.
Yeah.
And Colm just being the good-hearted friend that he is, he genuinely does want to know about his buddy and what's wrong with Colm. So Patrick once again tries to go.
Oh yeah, that's
to
that
his
scene
buddy.
where he literally comes in the doorway and puts a chair like backwards and sits on it and said, or he just sits at the chair and said, "Listen, I know we're not supposed to talk," and it's kind of towards the end of the movie, if I remember right. He's like, "Hey, is that the scene you're talking about towards the end when he's like?"
Well, it's about halfway through. It's not toward the end because Calm only is missing one finger at this point. And he said, "If you come to my house," he goes, "Not am I going to chop off one? I'm going to chop off the rest of them."
Right.
And so he comes to his house and he's like, "Listen, man, and he goes, I really want to know what's going on. Basically, where were you at?" type thing. And Calm goes, "You're not supposed to be here. Me cutting off a finger. What is that? Was that not good enough for you?" And so then Patrick was like, "Hey, how's the song coming?" And so he goes, "Well, I finished to relate."
Because he said that too. He goes, "Oh, I finished it," and he goes, "Oh, that's great,"
Yeah, he's trying to relate to him, and so he really is trying. But Calm is not. He did not go to Patrick at all and say, "Hey, man, seriously, in all seriousness, this is blah 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 blah. I really do need to get this done." So it just shows the progression, in my opinion, of their mental illness and how one buddy who was Calm
him doubling
was already,
down too, like cutting the finger off and going, "This is the red line," and now I have to stay the course. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that blew me away. And plus, when he's in the bar and he's missing the one finger and he's trying to play, he's listening to them and he's hitting a drum or whatever, and he's listening to them.
No, you're right. He was hitting the drum. You're right.
Yeah, but he's like bleeding on the table, and it just says something about the stereotypical grimness of Irish people. Of like, yeah, that's Bill, that's Colm, and he's bleeding, but we're gonna get through this set. You know what I mean? Like, it, not like, "Hey man, what happened to your finger?" Like none of that. Just like, "Yep, we got to finish the gig." It was like, that's grim. That.
Well, I'd be willing to bet in that small island, everybody knew why he was missing a finger. But the thing is not only was it the progression of a mental illness because he just wanted to be left alone, and so by he wasn't being left alone, I think he got pushed over that edge. So then he chopped off a finger, right? Yeah. And then not only did he chop off the finger, he took it to his best friend
and threw it
at the door. You know how mentally ill you have to be, not just to chop off a finger, but then take it to your buddy and throw it at his front door. And then
in a way he's trying to show him this, like, not only did you do this, but also this is what's happening. This is not, correct. I'm not lying, I'm not fibbing.
Right.
This
causality.
They causality. Like, this is what you've done and this is what I'm willing to do. And what are you gonna do now? Not that that's right. I'm just saying I think that's where he was. Of like, I've already said this. I have to follow through. I have to follow through with this.
For sure.
Yeah.
but the whole thing is like with Patrick also, you know, he wasn't willing to just give his friend some time. Maybe if he would have given him some time,
That's true.
he would have wrote his song. His song would have been done. Maybe he could have went back to Calm and said, you know, how's the song? And he could have been like, hey, you know what? Thank you for giving me weeks to months, whatever,
Right.
to finish my song. That's what I really needed. Would you like to hear it? And maybe they could have mended, but Patrick just kept drilling, and Calm just wanted to be left alone. And he genuinely was trying to be nice about being wanting to be
Yeah.
left alone, but
Yeah, I do
because
get.
he wasn't,
I do like that idea that you come up with of him finishing his song, waiting X amount of time. Patrick's sad, dejected, maybe at the pub drinking, because it sounds like they just had a pint, and he's just sitting there, and then he comes up and said, "Listen, I want to mend fences. I did the thing, but I'll be honest, I might have to go off in a couple months and write another song." And Patrick could have been like, "It's totally fine. Just let me know when you're done. You know, I'll be here. You know, yeah. I mean, that could have happened as well. You know, that could have been, like you said, that could have been something that he
yeah,
did.
correct. You don't know, but the other thing is like when you're on such a small island, and basically this is all you have to do. It's really hard to fall out of suit, right? Because everybody has like their routines that they do. Their
Mm-hmm.
routine
Mm-hmm.
is Tuesday, go get a pint. That's their
Yeah, yeah.
routine for umpteen years.
Well, too, you know, Paddock tried to, what's his name? The other actor that he was going to hang out with.
Or the young kid.
Yeah, I'm looking up the cast list right now. They'll have it over here. Dominic. Barry Keegan. Dominic Kearney was the part he. Dominic was the guy he played where he,
Yeah,
you know, he was like not bright, and you know, even Patrick was like, oh, I can't hang out with him, like he's so simple even for me or whatever, you know. And then didn't he said that at dinner that one time, he said touche, and they were
yeah,
like, what? And he goes, it's French. And I was like
right.
laughing. And I have heard some reviews where they're like, you know, totally understood this movie, totally got what they were saying. Accents weren't a big deal. But when Dominic came on, they're like, I got to put subtitles on because that's the most Irish person I've ever heard in my life saying Irish lines of dialogue, which I get it. I didn't, but I know what they're talking about because you were like, whoa, this guy's like, I mean, he is Irish. So it's like,
Yeah,
hey, just be 19. That's going to be a thing. Do you ever imagine that? Like people like, hey, okay, like you and I. Hey, you guys are whatever. You're American. Could you be American from the 1920s? And we like, wow, see you in hell, see, and like all this stuff. Like, would we do that? And like, do you
right.
think they went up to these actors that are Irish and be like, could you be 1920s Irish? And they're like, got it. So they just turned it up. You know, they didn't say fucking, they said fucking. And,
Yeah,
and I heard an interview with them where they said that like softens it. So it's like, it's just like a cordial curse word as opposed to the hard you f you whatever. The fucking was like a soft like I'm just fucking around. I'm just messing around. It isn't like a hard. It isn't like a hard swear word. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know um, that they have that. So
yeah.
um,
Well, so the you know, I liked the progression of the story because it did it slowly did, like their mental illness slowly started to come out.
oh
And
yeah,
um so Calm's mental illness, because without going into really great depths of this movie, which there's a lot to this movie,
yeah,
um so uh slowly his mental illness slowly started coming out based upon him wanting to create some sort of legacy for himself, even if it was like a song.
at the
um
and there's a some with art with that too of like, yeah, you can create a legacy or write a work of art, but like what is the cost of doing that? He is literally cutting off his playing hand
yeah,
to do this. So this is like his last work, which if he it might not have been. He might have been able to produce more, you know, if he wouldn't have done that. If he wouldn't have cut his hands off, you know.
right. So but him slowly going down this dark path of mental illness allowed Patrick to go down his dark path
Mm-hmm.
of mental illness, but to where Calm's mental illness came with what I believe is age and wanting to create a legacy. Patrick's mental illness was solely based on how Calm was treating him.
Right.
Um, because he was content in his little life of living, getting a pint with his best friend,
Right.
and so same with Calm. He had to show Patrick that, hey, I'm going to cut off a finger because I'm willing to see this thing through the end. Well, Patrick's got to go. Okay, well, I'm going to escalate. So
Right.
Patrick escalates that, and he says, he goes because after Calm cut off the entire fingers on one hand,
Yeah.
he went back to his buddy's house, threw every single finger at his best friend's door, and then Patrick's donkey,
Jenny. Yeah, Jenny died.
Jenny, Jenny ate the fingers, choked on the fingers, and died. And that's when Patrick stepped off that deep end and said, he went to Calm and he just says, basically, Jenny died.
Yeah.
You killed Jenny because she choked to death. And he goes, you're going to be at home, and I'm going to burn your house down.
And if
And
you're
he
in it,
said,
you're in it.
he goes, if you're in it, you're in it. And sure enough, he went to Calm's home. Calm was just chilling in his home, knowing that his
Yeah.
buddy was going to burn down his house.
Yeah.
And Patrick took twigs and propellant and
Burned it.
uh, burned the house down. Walked
Save
off
the
with the
dog.
dog.
Yep. Save
Saved
the
the
dog.
dog. Walked off with the house burning and his friend inside it.
Yeah.
And so his friend ended up getting out.
Yeah. That
So
last
Calm
scene
ended up
was
getting
pretty
out of the house.
amazing when they were on the
It
beach and he
was.
was like, thanks for saving my dog anytime. He's like, oh, maybe things, and then it's obviously like a lot of people, like I said, it's not just that one. I've read some posts about the war and them
Yeah.
going, oh, maybe it's over. And he goes, some things aren't over. That some things don't change. And it's like, yeah, like an analogy of the war of like, hey, it's quiet now. That doesn't mean it's not going
Yeah.
to get worse later. And like you and I, this is not, this isn't
Yeah.
over. This is what it is. I don't want to
Right.
talk to you. You don't want to talk to me. Stuff like that. I mean, it's one of those things where it keeps coming up in conversation, even in different threads I've read, different podcasts listened to. People are like, "Hey, what have you been up to?" And oh man, I saw the Banshees of Inisherin, and that leads to like a 30-minute conversation of themes. And I feel bad because I haven't seen the directors of the work In Bruges, which apparently is how these two actors first worked together. I haven't seen In Bruges. Have you seen In Bruges? I haven't.
No, I have
Yeah,
not.
I want to see it. And they said Brendan, who played Calm, was like, well, this In Bruges was about two men basically falling in love. This is about two men basically falling out of love.
Yeah.
And I had the same interview. They were like, we've been doing this a while. And then when we read the script, it was like, should we go method and just not talk to each other, to keep the atmosphere? And they said, well, we've been doing this for a long time. And they're really good friends in real life. And they said, no, I think we're fine. So they, after takes, they were like, hey, you all right? Yeah, I'm good. Like stuff like that. So they weren't not talking to each other. They were, they're still friends and everything. And to see the response too of the director writer said that it went through many, it was more violent. There was like gunfights and stuff that he written in there. And he said he took all that out because he really wanted it to be about these two people kind of clashing. He didn't want it to be about the island. He didn't want it to be about all these extra things. He just wanted it to be this focal point between these two characters coming together and what they would do,
Yeah.
what they would, where the story would take them. And I mean, obviously it worked. I think it will be up for, if it came out in 22, it's going to be up for an Oscar in a couple months, I would imagine.
I would assume these if it's not up for an Oscar, I think it should definitely be up for some sort of mention because they did an absolute fantastic job. I think they did a really great job of presenting um, mental illness with not just within a community, but within men, and then how maybe in a small community how things like this can happen. But
Mm-hmm.
remember, like Patrick, when he was pushed over the side by Calm, and once again, when it comes to mental illness, you are in charge of your mental state. So,
Well, sometimes.
um, so
Sometimes,
what?
yeah.
No, absolutely, I'll give that to you, absolutely.
Sometimes,
But
yeah.
Patrick, it was in charge of how his friend was in fact treating him, but he couldn't take it, and he did. He after the finger cut off and stuff like that, and Jenny died. You remember, Patrick came to Calm like he said, and that was one thing that was really powerful for me because he looked his friend dead in the eyes, and he goes, "You're gonna kill me. or I'm gonna kill you. He goes, that's how this is gonna end.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, how far do you have to go
Well, that
to tell
that
your best friend that?
well, it also does say a lot about grief or pain that, or like you
For
said,
sure.
mental illness. The idea that there's other people that get hurt in this equation. It could be between Calm and his work of art and Patrick, them not seeing eye to eye. But in the end, there is always collateral damage. His
Right.
sister left. Who knows? She got a job on the main island and everything, which is great. But that could have been exacerbated by like, you know what? I was really staying for my brother. Now he's going through all this. Like, I got to live, because they kind of said after their parents died, everything kind of got put on hold. She really wasn't doing what she wanted to do. So she's like, I have to go do this for myself. It was
Yeah,
something where it's like, there's always unintended consequences to this kind of like grief or confrontation. And it
for
was
sure.
Jenny, at the end of like his sister left. And then because of that, it's like a chain reaction. Then
For sure.
Dominic, drowned himself basically in the river. Which, by the way, great. Have you ever heard of the Chekhov's gun theory? It's
Maybe.
so it's a story device. Chekhov, Russian writer, said if you see a gun in the first scene or write about a gun in the first scene, it's got to go off in the last act. So
Okay.
Chekhov's gun, right? So
Yeah.
perfect use of Chekhov's gun. Dominic, the first time you see him, he's holding the hook that they pull him out of the river with, and he says, "Look at this hook I found. I can't
Yeah,
believe they
that's right.
found it." And he's like, "What do you do with this?" He's like, "I don't know, poke bodies with it or whatever." And that's exactly how they find him. That old woman, the witch,
Hmm.
Mrs. McDonald or whatever. They pull him out of the river with that hook. So I was like,
Yeah.
that's Chekhov's gun is pretty. It's one of those film rules where you're like, oh, that isn't a thing. Oh, it is a thing. Like you'll see it all the
Yeah.
time of like, oh, he
When
pulled
that's
himself out.
I didn't expect that. I did not expect Dominique to take his life because he basically loved, what was her name, like
Oh yeah, I
Sobnan
have it.
or
I have it up.
uh,
Yeah,
I can't,
Sobin.
Sobin.
I'm
So
probably saying that wrong, but yeah. So there's a lot of umlauts over these names. I screwed it up. Yeah, but
so
Sobin, yeah,
Patrick's, or not Patrick's, Patrick's sister,
yeah,
she
Sobin, yeah.
wanted something more, and she stayed on that island, which I'm glad she got out because if she, like you mentioned about collateral damage, if she would have stayed on the island, who knows what would have happened with her as this whole thing started to
Unravel.
unfold. So I'm glad that she got out. But
Yeah,
before she left, Dominic came to her and he's like, "Hey,
yeah. That
is there
was
ever a
There
chance?"
was
And she goes,
that was such a heartbreaking scene where what if the moment he walks up to her, what he's gonna say, and he does
"Yeah,
that thing of like he's an adult, but obviously it's an isolated island. It's not like he's had tons of women in his life or just had an adult conversation. And for him to be like, "Do you think there's ever a chance?" and and you could see the look on her face of like, "Oh no." Like, no, there's
yeah,
no, I'm so sorry. And then he does the thing we've all done where we've embarrassed ourselves of like, well,
yeah,
I'm going to go
how
do that thing
cool."
over there. I'm going to go over there and do that. Like,
Yeah,
we've all been there where you're like, it's not awkward over there. I'm going to go over there because it's less awkward. And I
yeah,
love that kind of stuff was like so heartbreaking. But the moment he walks up to you, you're like, oh no,
yeah.
what's going to happen? Like,
But I will say with her because of how big-hearted she was, and bless her heart, because um, she could have done like the normal movie thing, and this kid he's a little mentally slow,
no slow. Yeah. Well,
and
plus too,
she could have laughed.
yeah, he doesn't have a lot of like influences around him, right? Again, they're in an isolated island. It's not like what are his prospects? He's helping with
Right.
something
Well,
or
but with him also, just a little bit with him is that throughout his entire life, his dad was beating him. He would come
and
home
other stuff.
drunk and beat him and other stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but Jenny, not
Diddling, as they
Jenny,
said. Yeah.
um, the she
Which
she could have laughed at him, but she didn't. She smiled at him,
mhm,
and with all heart, she just said, "I'm sorry, but
mhm,
no,"
yeah.
So she let him down the best way that she possibly could, and I thought that was just absolutely great. And it's a movie of just dread and mental illness, and how little bit by little bit,
Yeah.
these people are being infected by their mental illness is coming to an end,
Yeah.
and it's just a domino effect. And I'm glad that one person was able to get off the island,
Yeah.
because she didn't like the direction of where her brother and his best friend were going.
And she got a job working at a library if I remember
A
right too,
library,
right?
yeah,
So that's
yep,
for her. She was always reading and didn't Patrick make like, what are you gonna keep reading books all the time? It's like, yeah,
yeah.
I'm gonna
Well,
keep doing that.
well, even then, remember how excited she was when Patrick was like, "Hey, do you want to come down and get a brandy?" And
Oh yeah.
she's like, oh yeah. And
Yeah,
so
and
as
after dinner,
he's,
brandy or sherry or whatever they're gonna do, like
yeah,
the and it seems like a treat for her, even though it's an island and she could go there anytime. She's like, oh yeah, we don't do stuff together. It'd be great, we'll go down and
yeah,
do
she was
that.
excited to spend that time with her brother, but it's sad because her brother was just using her as like a, hey, I can hang out with other people also. But
Yeah,
the whole thing with the pub came about, and he went home as she's on
yeah,
her way to the pub.
yeah.
Um,
And
but
then her thing of like, we're not gonna get a sherry or what, like, oh, like I see what's happening here. Like she has that realization of like, oh, okay, I thought we were gonna, okay, I know what this is now, like.
yeah,
Yeah, and she confronted Calm as well. He's like, "Oh, your brother's boring." She goes, "We're all what are we doing? Like we're all on this isolated island, of course. Like we're all boring. Like
right,
I don't
right.
understand what your problem is, like
Well, and
yeah.
the thing that I liked is that Calm is he projects himself to be this intelligent guy, and not that he wasn't intelligent for that island standard.
Yeah.
Um, uh, he made himself out to be that music lover, et cetera, et cetera. And remember that he's talking to Calm and or Patrick. Calm's talking to Patrick, and he's talking to Patrick about how these great people have created these things.
Yep. Yep.
Shakespeare created this and that sort of thing. And then he goes on to say like some sort of art or music or something like that. And Patrick, bless his heart, he's just like, I don't know who these people are, right? All I know is that we're friends. This is blah blah blah. And then he walks off, and Sobin is listening to the entire thing, and she's really excited that her brother's sticking up for her. And as he walks off, she walks up to Calm, and Calm's trying to do the whole smart thing in front of everybody, and she sets him straight. Remember, it was either a writer or music or something like
She
that.
got the year wrong or he got the century wrong of the musician. Because he said,
Yeah,
oh, he's 17th century. She goes, actually, he's 18th century or whatever. She said, it was like reverse. She's basically like, you screwed it up. So, yeah, you're smart, but like, and she's the reader. She would know, right? She's like,
right,
no, we're all like, get off your high horse, basically. Like,
right.
we get it. And that was a powerful scene, even my wife watching it was like, oh, wow, and I was like, yeah. Like, I hope. I think in February they do the Oscars, don't they? Like the end of February, they make the announcements. I
I'm not
think at the
sure.
end of February or March. So I guess in maybe a couple weeks we'll find out if it gets any nominations. It'd be interesting if it did. I think it won some like Golden Globes or something like that.
Okay,
Something. It got some nod, I think, for something. So I mean, I don't know. It's. I may watch it again. It's one of
I'm
those.
going to.
Yeah, it's one of those where I'm like, I keep thinking about it too, especially right after I watch it. We both had stuff going on and we couldn't do the podcast right away. But I'm kind of glad I
Right.
had some time removed and could read a little bit about the process and everything, and that it like really surprised me. So
Yeah. Well,
um,
afterwards, I watched like a little bit of the writing and stuff like that of the movie, and both of the actors, Colin and what is his name, Brandon.
yeah, Brendan. Yeah,
Yeah, they were talking, and then with the director, and they said, we just wanted to create a powerful movie. The island's made up. It's like on the island of Inishmore,
yeah. They said
which
the
is
other
off
one
the
doesn't
cliffs of
exist
Moher.
anymore. Yeah, yeah.
And so they were talking about how they had to create the pub and stuff like that, and they said they just wanted to create a movie to where you can rewatch this movie. It's about story, it's about friendship, and stuff like that. And they said we wanted just a powerful movie that you can rewatch. And if you watch the movie and uh, you look at it, it's a movie about friendship and mental health, and but somebody else can watch the movie and go, this is a movie about basically nothing. Like it's
Oh yeah,
about people getting up, going to work, going to get a pint, and going home,
right.
getting and doing the same thing over and
Well,
over.
so
But I like some of those movies.
yeah, I mean, the older I get too, and I can say that now because I'm over 40. The older I get, I do like those like two people sit in a room just hashing it out type movies,
Yes.
where there's few locations and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm gonna watch this again. I think probably if I'm getting over a cold. If I have tomorrow off, I might sit down and watch it again. So yeah, I'm glad I got to talk with you about it. I mean, it's been a couple weeks, but again, I'm kind of glad we had a little bit of time removed because I could read up on it a little bit and let it. Like I talk about that in the podcast all the time. I like to like sit with stuff for a little bit
Yeah,
because I think nowadays, especially with media and you're always consuming and always consuming, you don't really know how you feel until maybe a few days or a week has passed. You're like, no, that was really, really good, or I did not like this. This was definitely one of those that I really liked, and I
for sure.
hope that I hope they get to do more. I mean, I can't believe unless maybe it gets some Oscar buzz. I can't imagine whoever paid for it is like, what do they have to spend for advertising? It wasn't profitable, because
Yeah.
I heard a speech by Matt Damon a while ago talking about it's really hard to market stuff now and get people to watch it. Did it make its money back? It's on HBO now. Are they getting something for that? Like all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff of like, I hope it finds an audience. I mean, there's at least two people that liked it, at least, I guess.
Right. Right.
We liked it a lot. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, it was a great movie. And then I just thinking about your podcast, and then with the last few years and the stuff that you're going through, the stuff that I'm going through, and it's just men's mental health really is a thing. And like once again, like you've always mentioned, is that talk to somebody, talk to a
Yeah.
really good friend, talk to a pastor, genuinely go and seek psychiatric help. Is because there are some people out there that psychiatrists that are not worth their weight in gold,
Yeah.
and it's okay to go, you know what, you're not working for me, and actually genuinely continue to go find somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But just like you've mentioned to me in the past, of it's one thing to come to somebody and say, hey, how's it going, and then you have the automatic responses of, I'm doing good. But to take your time and say, not how's it going, it's,
How you
or how
feeling?
you doing,
Yeah.
it's literally taking the same, now you're going, hey, how are you feeling?
Yeah. That's
And you've been really good about saying, hey, Martin, how's the family, stuff like that. But how are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean,
And
that was therapy. They did that. Also,
yeah,
I did go to other therapists and they were not good.
yeah,
But the therapist I had, well, he retired, but the therapist I had before, I talked to him on the phone, told him what I needed, and he said, I specialize in that. And I was like, you can do that? And he goes, yeah,
yeah,
there's therapists that specialize in addiction, that specialize in marital things, that
yeah,
specialize in codependency. Like, so I always tell people that, like, one, at first, succeed, try again. And then two, make sure, you wouldn't go to a therapist that deals with addiction if you don't have an addiction problem. If you have, if you have an anger problem, you're going to want to go to a therapist that deals with anger. Like, okay,
sure,
I deal with anger management issues. I'm your
for sure,
person or whatever. And
for
then
sure.
even if that one doesn't work, there's a lot out there. So it is weird when I'm starting to watch movies now, going, man, if there was a therapist around to just, hey, why don't you guys come in the office? We'll hash this out. You don't need to cut your fingers off. You could, let's just talk about it. Let's just talk about it. What do like,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So I'm hoping that more comes from these. Well, I mean, the writer director, obviously, but I want to see. I'm probably going to watch In Bruges too. I got to sit down and watch that because I want to see what they did originally. I think that thing came out like 15 years ago though, so they'll both of them will look much younger, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
In the whatever. So I'm gonna go watch that. Well, Martin, thank you so much for talking about the Banshees of Inisherin. I will watch it again. I don't know about you, but I'll text you when I'm done watching. Like, did it complete? Watch 2 done. So yeah, I'll probably do that tomorrow. Like I said, if I get tomorrow off. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been nice that to have a platform, even if it's a minor platform, to talk
mhm.
about things like mental health
Oh yeah.
and how it affects people.
I
So,
mean, my
yeah,
platform is pretty minor, but yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah, but you still have the ability to, voice that. So,
Yeah.
um, I've enjoyed it. Well, I've always enjoyed talking to you anyway. So,
Thank
but yeah,
God.
man, I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a good day, man.
All right, brother. You too.
Oh. So that was it. It was Martin and I talking about the Banshees of Inisherin. It is truly a special movie. But before we leave this week, guys, I want to remind you this podcast with my website, www.gamingwithgrief, Monday morning at 7 a.m. Please go there. Let me know what you think of the show. You can also subscribe to the podcast in either Apple iTunes, the Google Play Store, or Spotify. Please go to those places and subscribe. Give me the likes, the reviews, stuff like that. You can also find the podcast Day and Date, the audio, on YouTube. So go there, subscribe to there, give me the thumbs up, things like that. You can write to me at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com. If there's something you want me to review or, just a comment about the show, leave it there. You can also find me on Twitter at JustLittleJoe. And I think that is it this week. I will see you again next week.